There's a photo of me from my nephew's graduation that people always comment on. I'm standing at the edge of the frame, wearing a navy blazer that doesn't quite fit, clapping slowly with a tight smile, while my grandma wraps her arms around my nephew. You can almost hear her whispering something sweet into his ear. No one else sees the tension in my shoulders or the fake grin I've plastered across my face like glue. But I remember that moment down to the second, because 5 words from her mouth turned a long, bitter history into a boiling point I couldn't ignore anymore. My name's Darren, I'm 34, and up until a few years ago, I used to think I had a pretty average family. Not the Hallmark kind, but the type you tolerate during holidays, where side eyes and passive-aggressive comments get buried under mashed potatoes and forced laughter. I didn't grow up resenting anyone in particular, not even my older brother, Luke, who always seemed to be the chosen one. You know the type. High school quarterback, married his high school sweetheart, had a baby right out of college, landed a corporate job thanks to one of Dad's golf buddies. All that. I didn't mind him back then. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. We just lived in parallel lanes. I was the creative one, took longer to find my path, as Mom would call it. Transferred colleges twice, worked odd jobs, eventually fell in love with restoring old houses. I flipped my first property at 27, and something clicked. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I learned how to budget, how to plan, how to pour concrete, and swing a sledgehammer, and talk to grumpy contractors. I built something with my own 2 hands. But none of that ever really mattered to my family, especially not to Grandma. She's the kind of woman who keeps score, but only counts the goals she wants. If you show her a painting you made, she'll say, "That's sweet, but where's the paycheck?" If you bring her a handmade gift, she'll smile and ask what store you got it from. She grew up during a time when success meant stability and a white picket fence with 2.5 kids. Anything outside that mold, she sees it as failure. And I didn't exactly fit into her definition of making it. I don't have a wife. No kids. I live in an old bungalow I restored myself, and I rent out the upstairs unit for extra income. To her, that translates to single man living in a fixer-upper with roommates. And the thing is, I never expected praise from her. But I also didn't expect the constant jabs. It started subtly. Years ago at Thanksgiving, when I brought over homemade pies and she said, "You still have time to learn a real skill, sweetheart." When I talked about my latest project, she'd smile and say, "So when are you going to stop all that and get a real job?" I'd laugh it off, because I've always been the quiet one, the one who avoids conflict. It wasn't worth the fight. My mom would give me those soft eyes across the table that just ignore her look, and I did. But then my brother's son, Ryan, started growing up, and Grandma found her new golden boy. Ryan's a good kid. Smart, polite, a little shy. He wants to be a mechanical engineer. When he was younger, I'd take him to my work sites and show him how to use a power drill or sketch a layout. He used to look up to me. I remember one summer when he was 9, he said, "Uncle Darren, you build castles." And I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd finally earned some respect from someone in the family. But once he hit his teens, Luke started steering him away from me. Told him not to waste time doing handyman stuff, that college is your ticket out. And Grandma backed that up every chance she got. Then came the incident with the loan. 3 years ago, I found a beat-up triplex in a rough part of town, rotting porch, busted windows, the works. But the bones were solid. I ran the numbers and realized if I could get a small loan to cover the initial repairs, I could make it work. My credit was fine, but the banks were slow and interest rates were rising. I remembered my grandma mentioning that she still had savings from when she sold her second home. So, against my better judgment, I asked her for a personal loan. Not a gift, a loan. I even drew up papers and included interest. She raised an eyebrow and asked, "You'll really pay me back?" I said, "Every penny." She agreed, but only if I let her put her name on the deed just in case. It wasn't unusual for family arrangements, and at the time, I trusted her. We signed everything. She didn't even read the contract I'd drawn up, just signed it and handed me a check. And to her credit, I made good on it. Paid her back fully over the next 18 months. She never acknowledged it. No, thank you. No, well done. Just acted like it never happened. I figured it was over. Lesson learned. I got the property fixed up, found solid tenants, and started turning a profit. But somewhere along the way, she must have forgotten what she signed. Because at every gathering since then, She's acted like she did me a favor. Started telling people she bailed me out, that I'd be homeless without her. My cousin even pulled me aside at Christmas and said, "I didn't know you were struggling that badly, man." I was furious. But again, I stayed quiet. I let it roll off me. Because what was the point of correcting her? She was in her 80s. I figured, just let her have her version of events. Until the graduation. Ryan had just finished high school with honors. Luke and his wife rented out a small event hall for a private celebration. Balloons, banners, catered food, the whole shebang. I showed up with a toolbox in my trunk because I'd just come from a broken radiator job, still had grease under my nails. I cleaned up as best I could and brought a gift I thought Ryan would love. A custom set of mechanical tools in a leather roll, engraved with his name. Something practical, something meaningful. But when I handed it to him, he smiled politely, said thanks, and then immediately put it on a table behind the stack of Apple gift cards and wrapped electronics. Grandma sat next to him the whole night, holding his hand like he was made of gold. I stayed on the sidelines, sipped my soda, talked to a few distant cousins, tried not to feel invisible. Then came the toast. Luke raised his glass, said something generic about hard work and family and bright futures. People clapped. I was halfway through a lukewarm bite of pasta salad when Grandma stood up. No one expected her to say anything, but she walked, slowly, dramatically, to Ryan, put both hands on his shoulders, and said, "This is what success looks like. Not like your uncle, who lives off handouts." I froze. The air left the room. No one laughed. No one moved. And then, as she looked at me, just for a second, her eyes said everything. "You never mattered." I didn't say a word. I didn't storm out. I just reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a folded document I'd brought with me for an entirely different reason. A notarized copy of the property deed she'd signed 3 years ago. The one with her signature and mine. The one that clearly showed I was the sole owner after repayment. I walked over. I handed it to her. She looked confused. Unfolded it. Read the first few lines. Her lips moved silently as her eyes scanned the page. Then her face went pale. Her hands trembled. She looked up at me, not with anger, not with confusion, but with something I'd never seen on her face before. Realization. And then, she turned to Ryan and said something that made the room fall into a second, deeper silence. That was the moment everything began to unravel. She didn't say a word for a long time after reading that document. Just sat there, hunched slightly, lips pressed into a thin line, the edges of the paper trembling in her hands. The silence stretched on, thick and awkward. My nephew looked between us, confused. My mom cleared her throat. Someone turned up the music slightly, like that would fix the vibe. But the moment had already landed. Hard. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just walked back to my spot, picked up my drink, and took a sip like nothing had happened. But inside, my heart was pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. I hadn't planned for this. I'd only brought that deed because I was meeting with my lawyer the next day to finally transfer it into a trust. It was supposed to be a formality, a box to check off. But the second she said what she said, called me a man who lived off handouts, I snapped without raising my voice. What I didn't know yet was that this was just the start. Over the next week, things got weird. My cousin Danielle texted me. "Hey, what was that paper you gave Grandma? She won't stop talking about it." I didn't respond. Then my Uncle Peter called to check in. He's never called me in his life. Not once. Just wanted to see how things are going. He said, overly chipper. I told him everything was fine. I was working on a bathroom renovation in the city. He made a weird grunt and said, "Yeah, your grandma mentioned something about a deed? Thought she co-owned a building with you or something." Oh, there it was. She was scrambling, trying to reframe the story again. I didn't bite. I just said, she did. For 18 months. Then I paid her back. I have every receipt. Silence on the other end. Then a mumbled, "Huh, okay." And the line clicked off. That's when it started to hit me. Grandma wasn't just trying to save face. She was trying to reassert control. See, in her mind, that building had become part of her legacy. Something she thought she could dangle over me. Maybe even pass along to someone else in the family when she passed. Someone more worthy. And now that illusion had shattered. In public. At a celebration for her favorite grandchild. And she hated me for it. I could feel the shift at the next family gathering. It was the 4th of July barbecue at Luke's house. Every year, it was the same. Burgers, beer, sparklers, and the adults talking about the good old days, while the kids ran around spraying each other with water guns. But this time, I wasn't really included. Oh, I was invited, but only out of obligation. Luke barely made eye contact. His wife, Chelsea, gave me this thin-lipped smile like she was trying not to spit something sour. And Grandma? She didn't even acknowledge me. Not a glance. Not a nod. Just sat in her chair under the umbrella like a queen on a faded throne, watching everyone else like I didn't exist. I sat near the grill with my youngest cousin, Jason, who was heading into college and actually seemed interested in real estate. We talked shop for a while. I offered to take him to one of my sites sometime and show him around. I could feel eyes on me while I spoke, but I ignored them. Later that night, just as the fireworks started, I saw Grandma whisper something to Luke. He looked straight at me, not in that brotherly way, but like he was sizing me up. I stared back. He shook his head, almost like he pitied me. And then he walked away with Ryan and didn't say goodbye. Something had shifted permanently. Still, I stayed out of it. I had my own life, my own business. I was renovating a duplex at the time that was bleeding money thanks to a crooked electrician who kept delaying permits. I didn't have the time or the energy to wage war with my family. But then Mom called. "Darren," she said, her voice tight. "Why didn't you tell me about the deed?" I paused. "Because it wasn't important." "Well," she said, "it is now. Your grandmother's furious. She thinks you tricked her. She says you manipulated her into signing something she didn't understand." My jaw clenched. "Are you serious?" "She's saying you snuck in a clause that excluded her from any equity, that you used her trust." I was speechless. "Mom," I said. "She signed it in front of a notary." I gave her the full document. She refused to read it. She said, and I quote, "I trust you." I even told her, twice, that I was paying her back with interest. I paid her every cent. I can show you the bank transfers. This wasn't a trick. It was a loan. "I know," my mom said softly, "but you know how she gets." And there it was. That phrase, "you know how she gets." How many years had I heard that? Every time Grandma made someone cry at Thanksgiving. Every time she said something cruel and it got brushed aside because that's just her way. She was sharp-tongued and old school, so she got a free pass. And the rest of us were supposed to absorb the blow and smile through it. Not this time. I let out a breath. She's rewriting history, Mom. Again. And this time it's not just words. She's trying to poison everyone against me. And you know what? I'm tired of letting her. Mom didn't reply, just sighed. And then she said, "Just don't make this worse." That stung, because I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd worked hard. I'd honored my word. I paid back a loan and got blindsided with a public insult for it. But I was the one being told not to make it worse. A few weeks later, it got worse anyway. I got a letter. Not an email. A letter. Certified mail. From a lawyer. Apparently, my grandmother was contesting the deed. She was claiming that she was under the impression that the property was a joint venture, that I'd promised her partial ownership in perpetuity, that she had been led to believe her name would remain on the title as long as she was alive. I was stunned. She was suing me, or at least threatening to. My hands shook as I read the letter. It wasn't an official lawsuit, just a warning. A legal jab. A shot across the bow. I called my lawyer. He chuckled when I explained. "She doesn't have a case," he said. "Not with a notarized contract, especially one that clearly outlines repayment and transfer of ownership. You did everything by the book. So what does she want?" I asked. "She wants you scared. She wants leverage. She wants to humiliate you into backing down." And that was when something inside me broke. All the years of biting my tongue. All the just ignore her dinners. All the times I'd been treated like a second-class family member because I didn't wear a tie to work or go to an office or have a 401k. All the times I swallowed my pride and played nice. And now, after doing everything right, I was being painted as a manipulator. A thief. Someone who used an old woman for financial gain. I stared at the letter again, and I decided right then I wasn't going to take it anymore. But the real betrayal hadn't even happened yet. That came the following weekend. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was cleaning up after a long day at the duplex when I got a call from Jason, the cousin I'd been mentoring. He sounded weird. Hesitant. "Hey man," he said. I need to tell you something. But you didn't hear it from me." My heart sank. "What is it?" He hesitated. "Grandma, she's been talking to Luke. They're trying to sell the narrative that you forged her signature, that she never agreed to any of it. That you bullied her. And he paused. And they're saying you took advantage of her memory issues. I nearly dropped my phone. What? She's telling people she has early dementia. That she didn't realize what she was signing. My head spun. She doesn't have dementia. I know. Everyone knows. But she's playing the long game. Luke even said if she can get a doctor to backdate a diagnosis, they might be able to challenge the deed in court. I felt sick. Not just because of the lie, but because of who was backing it. Luke. My brother. He knew the truth. He was there when I'd mentioned the loan years ago. He knew Grandma signed willingly. But now he was twisting the story to help her take everything back. Jason was still on the line. I thought you should know. I don't think it'll work, legally. But they're really pushing this. Trying to rally the family. Mom said she doesn't even know who to believe anymore. I thanked him. Hung up. Sat down on the porch step, staring at the cracked concrete I'd planned to fix next week. And for the first time in years, I let myself really feel the betrayal. My own grandmother was trying to paint me as a predator. My brother was enabling it. My family was turning into a courtroom jury, silent, watching, waiting to pick a side. And that's when I realized, if they wanted to play this like a game of chess, I already had my checkmate prepared, because Grandma had forgotten something critical about the document she signed. And soon, the entire family would find out just how much power she'd given away. But not yet. First, I needed to watch it all unravel just a little more. Just enough for them to think they were winning. Because revenge isn't sweet if it's rushed. It's better when it's slow, calculated, and impossible to undo. And that next family gathering? Let's just say, they should have read the fine print. The week after Jason's call felt like living in a stranger's house. Same furniture, same walls, but nothing felt safe anymore. I didn't trust the phone ringing. I didn't trust the look my neighbors gave me when I walked down the street. I didn't even trust myself to sit still without spiraling. It was like someone flipped a switch, and suddenly, I was the villain in a story I didn't even know was being written. The whispers started spreading faster than I could keep up with them. I wasn't on Facebook anymore, but a client texted me out of the blue to ask if I was really being sued by my own grandmother. That's when I knew it had gone public. I tried to laugh it off, typed something like, family drama, you know how it is, but my chest felt like it was caving in. 2 more job leads ghosted me that week. One realtor I'd worked with before said her clients wanted someone with a cleaner public image. I asked her to clarify. She didn't. Just changed the subject and said she hoped we'd circle back someday. That stung. Not because I needed the work. I had enough saved up to last a few months, but because the lie was working. It didn't even need to be true. All it had to do was exist long enough for people to doubt me. My mom called again. I ignored it. She texted instead. You need to talk to your brother. Please. Talk to Luke. The man who'd stood by and watched our grandmother smear me like I was some predator who preyed on the elderly. The man who had more money than me, more status, and still couldn't stand that I owned something outright without groveling to anyone for help? No thanks. But I did open my email that night. And there it was, another message from my lawyer. A formal notice this time. They'd filed a petition to contest the deed, citing mental incapacity at time of signing and lack of informed consent. My hands trembled over the keyboard. That phrase again. Lack of informed consent. It made me feel dirty, like I'd slipped something past her in the dead of night, when in reality, she was the one who told me not to worry about reading the fine print, who waved off my insistence that we review it line by line, who laughed and said, I trust you, Darren. You're the good one. Now that same woman was using that moment as a weapon. I didn't leave the house much after that. Not because I was scared, because I was humiliated. Every interaction felt loaded. Every question felt like an accusation. Even people who meant well, who said things like, I'm sure it'll blow over, or she's just old and confused, made me feel worse. Because they didn't get it. It wasn't just about a deed or a lawsuit. It was about a lifetime of being seen as less. And for a while, I believed it. I stopped working on the duplex. I'd walk by the half-finished porch and just keep walking. Couldn't bring myself to pick up the hammer. My tools stayed in their bag. My email inbox piled up. Even Jason's texts went unanswered. I started waking up late and falling asleep early, trying to shrink the day into something less painful. Then one morning, I stepped outside and saw that someone had thrown eggs at my truck. It wasn't just vandalism. It was the message that hit harder. On the windshield, in shaky red spray paint, someone had written, Elder Abuser. I stood there, staring at it. The paint was still wet. The yolk slid down the glass like slow tears. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I couldn't breathe. That was the bottom. That was the day I broke. I didn't even try to clean it up. Just climbed back into bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. Not thinking, just existing, like a ghost in my own skin. And then, sometime after midnight, I grabbed the deed from my desk drawer and reread every single line. That's when I saw it again. The clause I'd added at the last minute. Not to trick her, not to be clever, but to protect myself in case something exactly like this happened. It was buried near the end. Paragraph 14, subsection C. Upon full repayment of principal and agreed interest, Party B, lender, forfeits any and all claims to the physical or financial assets associated with property located at 14B, Lansing Avenue, present and future, in perpetuity. It was airtight. My lawyer had double-checked it. She had signed it. And that gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. So I started rebuilding. Quietly. The next day, I drove to the duplex. Cleaned the porch. Picked up the hammer. It felt good to sweat. To use my hands. To fix something that had been broken too long. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb and worked 12-hour days. Replaced the windows. Finished the wiring. Installed tile in the upstairs kitchen. The rhythm calmed me. It reminded me who I was. While I worked, I made a list. People who'd stood by me. People who had doubted me. People who had stayed silent. Not to punish them. Just to see clearly. And the first name on my stood by me list? Jason. The kid who had nothing to gain by warning me. Who had every reason to keep his mouth shut and still chose to tell the truth. So I invited him to the site one Saturday. Showed him around. Let him swing the hammer. Taught him how to install a faucet. He grinned the whole time like it was Christmas. You really love this stuff, huh? He asked. I nodded. It saved me. That night, I emailed my lawyer. Told him I wanted to escalate. Not just defend, but go on offense. He replied within the hour. Let's hit them where it hurts. But I didn't do it for revenge. Not yet. I did it because I needed to get my life back. I applied for permits to convert the duplex into a short-term rental. Created a full business plan. Filed the LLC paperwork I'd been putting off for months. Talked to a graphic designer about branding, something I never thought I'd care about. But suddenly I did. I wanted something with my name on it. Something no one could take from me. Then came the phone call I didn't expect. My mom. She sounded tired. Can I come by? She asked. I paused. Why? I want to talk. No drama. Just talk. So I said yes. She showed up with a Tupperware container of stew, like it was 1998 again. We sat in silence for a while, eating in my kitchen. The walls still smelled faintly of paint. Then she said, You were right. About everything. I looked up. She's not confused. She's just cruel. And Luke, he's not helping her out of loyalty. He's doing it because he wants that property. I nodded slowly. I know. I didn't see it before. But now, she shook her head. I overheard them talking. She told him that if he helps her win this, she'll rewrite her will to give him everything. She's cutting everyone else out. Even me. That hit me harder than I expected. My mom, who'd always played peacekeeper, looked betrayed. And not just by Grandma. By herself, too. I let her walk all over you, she whispered. I let her mock you. Dismiss you. I didn't protect you. I swallowed hard. You're not the only one. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. What's this? I asked. Notes from her doctor. She's sharp as a tack. No signs of memory loss. I asked him to write a statement. I opened it. There it was. A formal medical document stating that as of the time of the deed signing, in the year following, Grandma exhibited no symptoms of cognitive decline. It was the nail in their coffin. I looked at my mom. Thank you. I should have done it sooner. She left a few hours later, and I sat on the porch with the folder in my lap, thinking about everything I'd built. Not just the duplex, but myself. I wasn't the same man who got humiliated at a graduation party. I wasn't the boy who swallowed insults like vitamins. I had something they didn't expect. Patience. And now? Now I was ready. Because the next family gathering was just days away. And I had something to show them. Something that would change everything. But not in anger. In clarity. Because sometimes the best revenge is proof. The family reunion was scheduled for Sunday afternoon at the park near Lake Hill. Same place we'd been going since I was a kid. Usually the reunions were lighthearted. Picnic tables covered in plastic red and white tablecloths. Kids screaming through sprinklers. The older relatives lounging under tents talking about who'd gotten fat or married. But this year felt different. No one said it, but everyone knew. There was tension in the group chat weeks before it even happened. Some people dropped out last minute with flimsy excuses. Others were bringing a friend as a buffer. Jason messaged me the night before. "Are you really going?" I replied, "Wouldn't miss it." Because for once, I wasn't walking into a trap. I was walking into a stage I'd set myself. The weeks since Mom gave me the medical documents had been productive. I wasn't just rebuilding physically. I was building legally, emotionally, and financially. I started meeting with my lawyer every other day. We went through every clause, every line, and prepped contingencies for whatever came next. At the same time, I filed a counterclaim to Grandma's petition, not for damages, yet, but for an official motion to dismiss on grounds of a frivolous suit, with attached evidence that painted the full picture. Emails, bank transfers, call logs, the notary's testimony, and the medical statement my mom got, signed and stamped. It was airtight. I knew it. My lawyer knew it. But I didn't want to win in court. I wanted to win in front of them. So I reached out to 3 people. First, Danielle. My cousin, mid-30s, sharp as a tack and fed up with family politics. She was one of the few who didn't treat me like a pariah after the graduation fallout. I sent her a message asking if she'd help record a timeline of events from her perspective. She agreed, even offered to go on record. "Someone has to speak up," she said. "This is turning into a witch hunt." Second, my notary. I hadn't spoken to her in over 2 years. She still remembered the day my grandma signed the deed. She was fully aware, she said. Refused to read it. Said she trusted you. Even made a joke about skipping the fine print like she does with tech agreements. That alone could bury half the false narrative. I got her to record a formal affidavit. And finally, I reached out to Jason again. Not just for support, but to bring a friend. Someone with a drone. "Wait, you're going to film the reunion?" Jason asked. "Not the whole thing," I said. "Just a few key moments. Wide shots. Conversations I'm involved in. If things go sideways, I want receipts." He didn't even hesitate. "I'll bring my guy." The morning of the reunion, I ironed my shirt for the first time in months. I chose a dark navy polo and clean jeans. Not flashy, but intentional. Like someone who wasn't hiding anymore. I printed 2 copies of every document. One went in my backpack. The other stayed in a manila envelope inside my car, just in case. When I pulled up to the park, half the family was already there. Luke was at the grill, predictably. He liked the image. Provider, protector, golden son. Chelsea stood nearby arranging condiments like they were museum pieces. Ryan was tossing a football with 2 of the younger cousins. He looked like a shadow of who he used to be. Reserved, polite, but no longer the curious kid who once called me the uncle who builds castles. And then I saw her, Grandma, sitting in a fold-out chair under the big oak tree in a floral print dress, holding a cane she didn't need, surrounded by her court of enablers, Aunt Linda, Uncle Pete, and a few of the others who'd swallowed her lies without question. I felt my fists clench, but I let the tension pass through me like water. Today wasn't about anger. It was about clarity. I made my rounds, spoke to the ones who'd stayed neutral, hugged a few of the younger kids, shook hands with Danielle. She gave me a small nod and whispered, "They're already talking. Grandma's telling people you've admitted guilt privately." I smirked. Perfect. About an hour in, Jason arrived, with his drone guy in tow. They kept it low-key, said they were testing out some footage for a documentary project. Everyone bought it, or pretended to. The drone hovered high, unobtrusive. No one really paid it any mind. Until I approached the oak tree. I waited until most people had finished eating. Grandma sat surrounded by empty plates and idle chatter, like a queen surveying her territory. Luke stood behind her, arms crossed. Chelsea flanked him like a bodyguard. My mom sat a few feet away, nervously tapping her knee. I walked right up to them. "Hi, Grandma," I said evenly. She looked up at me with a smile that could freeze fire. "Darren, surprised you showed up." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. "Actually, I brought something." I reached into my bag and pulled out a simple folder. Luke's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to be?" "Just some context," I said. "Since there's been a lot of confusion lately. Thought I'd help clear it up." I opened the folder and pulled out the first page. The notarized deed, with both our signatures, clearly showing the repayment clause and forfeiture of claim. I handed it to Grandma. Her fingers tightened around it like she wanted to crush it. "This again," she said. "We've already." Keep reading, I said. Especially paragraph 14. That one's my favorite. Luke snatched it from her and scanned it. His lips moved as he read. His eyes darkened. This doesn't prove anything, he muttered. Oh, but it does, I said calmly. Especially when you pair it with this. I pulled out the medical report. Signed by Dr. Anaya. Confirms Grandma had no signs of cognitive impairment during the signing. If anything, she was sharper than me that day. Remember, Luke? You were there. You told her it was good business sense. Luke's face flushed. You're twisting this. I'm just reading it, I said. People had started to gather. Conversations died down. Someone turned off the music. The air felt charged. Then I pulled out the notarized affidavit. The notary's statement about Grandma waving off the fine print. 3 independent sources confirming what happened that day. And just in case that's not enough, I've submitted all of this to the court already, including the screenshots of texts where Luke referred to the loan as a smart deal for Darren. You remember those, Luke? His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Grandma sat frozen. I took a breath. I didn't want this. I didn't start this. But I'm not going to let my name get dragged through the mud while you pretend I stole something you gave me as part of a business deal. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The truth was louder than any of them. I stepped back. Jason, from a distance, gave me a thumbs up. The drone was still hovering, still rolling. Danielle came up beside me and said, Do you want to say it, or should I? Say what? She looked at the crowd, then back at me. That they've been caught. And she did. Right there, in front of 24 family members, she told them what she'd heard. The whole deal. The rewritten narrative. The fake dementia claim. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just told the truth. And suddenly, the crowd wasn't so quiet anymore. People started murmuring. Questions flew. Aunt Lisa asked to see the documents. Uncle Pete backed away from Grandma like she'd grown horns. Even Ryan walked over, staring at his father in disbelief. Then Grandma stood up. It was shaky, theatrical. You've turned them against me, she said. All of you. I met her gaze. No, Grandma. You did that yourself. She turned and walked away. But it wasn't over. Because this was just the reveal. The real revenge? That was still coming. When Grandma walked off beneath the giant oak tree, dragging her unneeded cane like a prop in some low-budget courtroom drama, I didn't follow her. That's what she expected, for me to chase, to beg, to smooth things over like I always had. But this time, I stood my ground and watched her shrink into the distance. Alone, isolated by her own web of lies. The silence that followed was dense. The family reunion, the grand event that usually ended with hugs and tired kids sleeping in their parents' laps, had morphed into a real-time reckoning. A few people murmured, unsure whether to say something or just pretend the last 15 minutes hadn't happened. Luke tried to recover first. He puffed out his chest and turned toward me, like he thought he still had some moral high ground. You didn't have to ambush her like that, Darren. You embarrassed her in front of the entire family. I raised an eyebrow. You mean the same way she humiliated me at Ryan's graduation? Called me a freeloader after I paid her back every cent I owed her? Lied to everyone about having dementia just so she could steal back what was never hers to begin with? He flinched at the word steal. I was trying to protect her legacy, he snapped. You took advantage of her. No, I said flatly. I protected mine. He didn't have a response. Just tightened his jaw and walked away, trailing after his wife who had already begun packing up their things. Danielle let out a long exhale beside me. That was like watching the final act of a courtroom drama. Jason walked over, his phone in hand. We got clean audio of the entire conversation, he whispered. Drone footage too, just in case they try to lie about how it went down. I nodded. Let's hold on to it. I'm not trying to post it online or ruin anyone's life. I just want the truth on record. But the funny thing about the truth is, it spreads faster than any lie. Within 24 hours, the family group chat turned into a circus. Some people defended Grandma, claimed she was old and confused. Others flipped sides immediately. My cousin Ethan wrote, I always knew something felt off. Darren, I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Even Uncle Pete, who had stood by Grandma's side during the whole ordeal, sent a private message saying, I was misled. I'd like to apologize in person. But it didn't matter what they said now, because the damage had already been done to them. See, while everyone was scrambling to figure out how to recover from the public mess, I was already executing the real plan. 3 days after the reunion, My lawyers submitted the full case file for judicial review. Not only did we file to dismiss Grandma's petition with prejudice, meaning she could never attempt to challenge the deed again, but we also filed a defamation claim against her and Luke for malicious falsehood and financial interference. Normally, I wouldn't have gone that far, but their lies had cost me clients, smeared my name across social circles, painted me as a predator. That kind of damage doesn't just blow over. It clings to your reputation like tar. We weren't suing for millions, just enough to make a point, and they knew it. Because 2 weeks later, I got the call. It was Luke. "I don't want this to go to court," he said. "It'll get ugly." "It's already ugly," I replied. "You made sure of that." There was a long pause. Then he said, "What do you want?" It was the first time in my life I'd ever heard him ask me that. Not assume, not command. Ask. I didn't smile. I didn't even enjoy it as much as I thought I would. "I want an official retraction," I said. "From both you and Grandma. A signed statement acknowledging the truth. I want it emailed to the entire family list. And I want you both to step away from the lawsuit. If I get that, I'll drop the defamation claim." Another long pause. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. And if we don't, then we go to court, and I drag out every lie, every attempt to manipulate the system, every witness and piece of evidence I've got. It'll be public and permanent." He caved. Of course he did. The statement arrived 2 days later, drafted by their new lawyer, signed by both of them. It read, in part, "We acknowledge that the original deed was signed with full understanding and consent. No coercion or manipulation occurred. The claims of memory loss were unfounded and based on false assumptions. We regret the pain and confusion caused to Darren and the rest of our family." I forwarded it to everyone. No comments. No gloating. Just the truth. But that wasn't the end of it. Because while Luke was busy cleaning up his mother's mess, another little consequence came knocking. Turns out, word of the legal threats and defamation had reached his company's compliance department. See, Luke worked in finance, a mid-level exec at a firm that didn't like bad press, especially when it involved lawsuits and allegations of elder fraud, even if unfounded. 3 weeks later, I heard he'd been reassigned to a non-client-facing position. A demotion in everything but name. No bonus. No promotion. His pristine record? Tainted. As for Grandma, she wasn't invited to Thanksgiving that year. Not by me. Not by Mom. Not by half the family. She stayed home. Alone. The woman who once held court at the center of every gathering now sat quietly in her house, surrounded by fading photos and unopened letters. My mom visited once out of pity, said the place was dusty and the TV was always on, even when she was asleep. She asked if I'd ever forgive her. I said, "I already have, but I'm never going back." In the months that followed, I finished the duplex renovation. It launched as a short-term rental in February. Bookings were full by March. Reviews started pouring in. Beautiful craftsmanship, attention to detail, feels like home. I made a website, added photos, included a short about the builder blurb with my name at the bottom. It was the first time I'd ever publicly attached myself to something with pride. Jason kept working with me, helping film my projects. We started documenting before and after transformations. One of our reels went viral. I got offers for partnerships, consultations, even a small speaking gig at a real estate event. My name, once whispered in doubt, was now respected in circles that mattered. I didn't need validation, but it felt good to build something no one could tear down. And as for the property that started it all, the one Grandma tried to steal, it's the crown jewel of my portfolio now. Rented out, profitable, polished. There's a framed copy of the original deed hanging in my home office. Not to gloat, to remind myself that I earned everything I have, not through luck, not through handouts, but through grit, patience, and the quiet kind of revenge that doesn't need fire. Just the truth, and a little time. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's living a life they can't lie about.